Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. It's a lovely sunny evening here in Edinburgh. I don't know if you can see. Woo, beautiful. So I hope I'm not squinting. Thanks for joining me. I'll be recording this webinar, but for privacy reasons, I won't show any questions and answers at the end. So I'll save the questions and answers to the end of the presentation. And if you are watching this on YouTube or on any of the social media platforms, feel free to leave a question underneath the video, or you can contact us directly to ask any questions that you have. We love to get your questions, so please don't hold back. Please don't be shy. There are no silly questions. I will answer any questions for the people on this webinar at the end, but for privacy purposes, I won't be showing any names and any questions and answers. So let's get started, shall we? Right, I hope you can all see my screen and my audio. I assume so. I won't be checking the chat box during the presentation today, so I'll have a look in a moment just to make sure there are no technical problems. So welcome, everybody. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box. I'll get to them a little bit later. Yeah, Google Meet should be quite easy to use, but occasionally if you stop hearing me or anything, then please just reload the page and you should be able to hear me. All right, so what will I be talking about today? Well, today's webinar, as you can tell from the title, is related to presentations. So at Intrepid English, we have launched a wonderful course in 3 parts, because it's very big, about presentations. It's in our academy. Now, the first part of the course was launched a couple of months ago. That was about structure. And I'll give a little recap of the first webinar that I gave about that. Just to remind you then, the course itself is in the Intrepid English Academy. We have lots of great features in the Academy to help you to stay motivated, have a lot of fun, find it very interesting, hopefully. So please check it out if you can. For any of you who joined the first webinar, you may remember that I showed you some really interesting tips about how to structure a good presentation. Okay, so in the first part of our course, we talked a lot about the shape of presentations. So I'll get to that in just a moment. Throughout the course, we've based the lessons on very popular, very interesting, very captivating TED Talks and other presentations. Normally, they have millions of views, so they're really good. They're the best ones that we could find. And each section has a different TED Talk. So you're learning these skills and these tips from the experts. We also add into the course flashcards to help you study vocabulary. We have achievement badges as well, which are great fun. So for when you've finished a quiz, when you've completed a course, anything you do really in the academy that involves any kind of effort or hard work for learning, then you can receive an achievement badge. And those badges are worth points. So we've got some really keen students who have studied quite a lot in the academy. They have achieved lots of badges and they have accrued many, many points and got lots of free English lessons. So it works. And they say that the achievement badges are one of the reasons why they're super motivated. So if you have any questions about those, please feel free to ask and I'll answer them in a few moments. Okay, so where do you find the course? It's in our Intrepid English Academy. In the past, you may have tried to go to the Academy and you weren't able to get in if you weren't a member. But recently, we opened it up so that you can see the courses that are available. We have 4 taster courses, which are available for free. So you can study those even if you're not a member. You can find those on our homepage. You can do that just by clicking on the logo at the top of anywhere on the Intrepid English website. But if you are a member, you can get into the Academy and study the courses. Now, our Business English Skill Set courses are for super students. So we have 4 different membership levels. And the top 2 are super student and intensive improver. So the business English courses are available only to the top 2 levels of our members. So we created this course of business English skills to help students at any English level to improve their business English skills. The Business English Basics course is a great place to start if you haven't studied business English before. And the general theme of the courses, although they're based on skills like negotiations and like today presentations, small talk, writing emails and things like that, it's not just about learning the language that you should use. It's about learning how to do these things really well. Okay, so we're not just interested in teaching you some helpful phrases regarding presentations. We want to teach you how to be brilliant at presenting. That's the aim of our game. We're not in it for, basic skills. We're in it for impressive skills. Okay, so let's have a little recap of the last webinar for those of you who couldn't join us last time. I focused on the first lesson in the first part of the course, and that's based on structure. And we heard from the wonderful Nancy Duarte, who's a bit of a presentations guru. And she has a very famous TED Talk, which describes the secret structure of great talks. She's a Silicon Valley expert. She actually created a presentation for some really famous presentations that you might have seen. For example, Al Gore did a very famous documentary and TED Talk called The Inconvenient Truth about climate change, and it actually won him an Oscar. Well, Nancy Duarte is the brains behind the presentation that he delivered. And she says that she wondered why, when we tell stories, it really captivates our listeners and our audience. But for some reason, when we deliver presentations, they can flatline, which means just kind of there's no reaction. It's sort of dead. Why is that? Why are stories so interesting, but presentations can be so boring? Well, after a lot of research, she discovered that there's actually a secret structure to many very, very good talks. She researched a lot of the most powerful speeches, presentations, talks in history. Also, she researched literature, stories, film, lots of things, really, to find the best and to find why they are the best. And she found this shape came up again and again. Okay. Let me just take you through it because I know it's quite a lot to look at. So what she says is that at the beginning of any captivating story, speech, talk, presentation, whatever you want to say, there is a beginning which involves painting a picture of the realities of the current world. Okay, so talking about what currently is the situation. And there's often a turning point. She calls this the call to adventure. That's the moment where You or your audience or the reader has to contend with the idea that things could change for the better. Okay, this is the turning point. This is the point where things start to happen. And in great talks, the best orators or speech givers, presenters, they describe what could be. And that just means the future with your ideas adopted. So what could be the future if the audience is persuaded by what you say? Okay. Then she says the gap needs to be as big as possible between what is currently the situation and how great the future could be if people adopt your idea. Now, Nancy Duarte recommends going between these two several times. Okay, so the middle of the presentation is a contrast between what is and what could be. Why does she do this? Well, she says that by predicting the audience's resistance to your idea, you can guide them towards your goal. So whether you're selling something or teaching them something or trying to convince your audience to do something, by predicting their resistance and confronting that resistance, this structure allows you to say, you may argue, or you may be thinking, blah, 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 this is their argument against your point, but actually, this is the solution. If you do that many times, by the end of your presentation, the audience will be a lot more receptive to adopting your idea. Okay, so the goal or the end result, she calls new bliss. That's the future with your ideas adopted. So you need to end your presentation on a higher plane, on a more positive note. Okay, hopefully then the audience will leave the presentation committed to action. Okay, there's a very important part here. Right at the end, you need the call to action. This is when you ask the audience to do something. Okay, you do this at the end so that it's fresh in their mind. So when they leave the presentation, they're thinking, yes, I want to buy that product, make that change in my life that will help with the environment or anything you want them to do. That goes at the end, and that call to action is very important. So that is a very brief look at Nancy Duarte's secret structure of great talks. Now, you can watch the whole webinar on the YouTube channel, the Intrepid English YouTube channel. Please take a second to like and subscribe to our channel. We add new videos every week on grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, all kinds of things. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love your comments or your suggestions about future videos. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be uploading this webinar a little bit later on. So you can feel free to ask any questions when you re-watch it. So don't worry if you don't have a chance to ask anything today. Okay, so today's talk is going to be about the second part of our presentations course, and that is about content. So part one was about structure, how to lay it all out. Part two is about content. Part three, about delivery, is available in July. And that will be looking at, how to deliver your presentation in a really compelling way. But of course, you can't deliver compelling presentation without writing compelling content first. Okay, so just like part one, we've got achievement badges, we've got vocabulary flashcards, and we've also got the professional group or business English group in the Intrepid English website. So you can chat with other English learners, other people who are studying the course, practice things, ask us questions. And it's a really great place to meet other English learners and motivate one another. The Intrepid English teachers and I love the conversations that go on in there. So, We'll learn 4 skills in the second part of this course: telling a story, describing trends, signposting, and questions and answers. Okay. Now, when I say telling a story, I don't mean, like a bedtime story that you might tell your kids. This is something which is common in all great talks, all great presentations. Even just a little story can help the audience to relate to the speaker. It can help the audience to put themselves in your shoes. Okay, so if you're telling a story, it doesn't have to be super personal and vulnerable, although a lot of the presentations that we will see within the course do contain personal anecdotes, personal stories, and that's possibly one of the reasons why these TED Talks are so good. Describing trends, now, yes, that could be talking about charts and graphs, but it doesn't have to be that. You can be talking about, popular culture and how things have changed, okay? Talking about your industry, for example, and where you see things going in the future. Okay, signposting, I'll get to that in just a second. And questions and answers. So this is the part that most people think, oh gosh, I don't like this section of presentations. But as we'll talk about in a few minutes, if you have some really great phrases and you've prepared some potential questions, you will feel a lot more confident than just saying, okay, does anyone have any questions, and just seeing where it goes. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. Right. As I mentioned, each part of the course is based on a really, really good TED Talk or another presentation or a speech or something that really shows the language and the skills that you'll learn. And the first part, who better to teach you about telling a story than Barack Obama? I don't know if you're familiar with his famous 2004 speech at the Democratic National Congress, but he went from an unknown senator to all of a sudden being on the political map in the United States. He was suddenly the hot topic. People were talking about him. Who is this guy? Because he came across on that night so genuinely and so confidently that people were like, who is this guy? And watching it later and seeing it in documentaries, people were saying, who is he? I think he could be the next president of the United States. Well, he wasn't the next one, but he was the one after that and after that. So he definitely did a good job, and it all started on this night. Okay. So one of the things he did was tell several short stories, very small snippets of his family history and his life, and he knitted them all together perfectly. And during the course of the speech, he took the audience on a journey, and by the end they were full of enthusiasm. So we'll take a look at some of the tips for how to do that. I'm not expecting a stadium address like Barack Obama's, but there are some really great tips in there, like repetition, like metaphor, other linguistic devices that can help people to stay with you. And as we spoke about earlier, as Nancy Duarte says, stories are captivating, but often presentations kind of fall flat. So by developing it with a little bit of a story, you can really engage your audience and keep them engaged throughout the presentation. Okay, next part, you'll learn lots of phrases for describing trends. The expert who will teach you this is Bono, the rock star and famous activist. He did a really cool talk about, I know it sounds awful, but about world poverty, but it actually is filled with quite uplifting news. he wanted to look at things in a more positive light. And it's really great talk. So you can see lots of phrases for describing trend, talking about performance, what's happened in the past and how it's connected to now, and even where it might go in the future as well. Okay, lesson 3 is about signposting. And I'll give you some more signposts and information about signposts in a moment. The TED Talk that is featured in this lesson is by Kelly McGonigal, who is a health psychologist. And she talks about how stress or anxiety can actually be beneficial to you if you see it in the right way. So this is a bit of a double whammy here. We have a talk which showcases great signposting, very interesting talk, and you'll learn lots of tips for how to deal with pre-presentation anxiety. So, you know, you got a lot from that lesson as well. Lesson 4 in the course will focus on the fundamentals of questions and answers. This is something I really like to work on with my students because it is such a quick turnaround from, oh gosh, I don't want to do that, to, I reckon I can do this. I really like this part, mainly because it's something that students really struggle with, and I love to help them with these kinds of things. So we'll look at a presentation, a Q&A featuring Steve Jobs. He is the boss after all, and we'll see lots of great examples of Q&A, how to keep things light-hearted, and also how to play for a little bit of time. If you need a second to think about your answer, having a few choice phrases ready to go will really, really help. Okay. After every lesson, we have fun quizzes so that you can check your comprehension. And we have vocabulary flashcards. I'll show you one of those in just a second. They're easy to find in the main menu. You just go to the vocabulary section. That means you can review them anytime, which is super helpful. We've put flashcards there, but we do also tell students that one of the best ways to practice your using your new vocabulary is to hop on over to the group forum and, you know, write some example sentences. If you need any corrections, we can correct you, and other students will also learn from it as well. So that's a really great way of just kind of memorizing these words and phrases. The vocabulary in this course is advanced. You'll know some of the words, but I'm quite sure not all of them unless you have a C1 level of English. So, you know, I'm sure you can learn lots of wonderful vocabulary. Here's a flashcard here. As you can see the term on the front, the definition on the back. You can shuffle the flashcards, and you can also click the little star at the top right-hand corner of the flashcard so that it will save it for future use. One of the things that makes this course super unique and really motivating for students is that after every lesson, you get to use the skills you've learned and the vocabulary and the grammar by creating your own presentation. So step by step, there's little tasks, little manageable tasks at many different points throughout the course where the teachers will guide you from having an empty presentation to adding nice visuals, creating beautiful slides, creating a really persuasive presentation that is complete with a whole script that we can utilize your new vocabulary with. And by breaking this quite large task down into small manageable pieces, you can go from having no experience with presentations or creating slides to creating a really captivating and interesting presentation, and it's fun. So yeah, we've got some really, really great ones here. We found that students who aren't even preparing for presentations at work love this exercise or these exercises because It helps them with their speaking skills, pronunciation. They can present to us anything from their hobby to their job, to a product they are inventing even, or, talking about their passions and why they are important. Anything that the students are passionate about works well for a great presentation, because we can learn from them, they can learn from us, and the students are really eager for the next lesson when they get to add even more to their great presentation. And at the end, it's so fulfilling to see them present it. The Intrepid English teachers and I often recommend this course, and this is the most popular course in our academy, even though we've only released the first 2 parts of it, because the students really get so much from it. I'm doing a great one at the moment about geothermal innovation. Hi, Mohammed. And I'm really excited about learning all about it from a true expert. So yes, that will be very exciting. I might see if he will be up for coming on board with the next webinar. We'll see. Okay, moving on. So we've had a recap of the first part of the course, and we're looking at the second part of the course now. So we talked about these 4 skills that you will develop throughout the course. Now, today I want to talk a little bit about signposting. What is signposting? So as you can see by this picture here, this is a signpost. This is the kind of signpost you would see at the side of a road. Maybe not this one, because this one's got a lot of information on it, but these are posts which help you to know where you are and where you're going and how long it will take. And signposts in a presentation do a similar job. They give you information about the direction of the talk and what you can expect, how long you can expect the talk to last, and lots of other important factors. So signposts really are helpful, but they're essential because they really help you to keep the audience's attention throughout. How many times have you been in a presentation or a talk and you've thought, like, okay, how long is this going to take? Can I ask a question now? Or I don't really understand what he said. Can I ask, or should I wait? And, sometimes you're thinking, oh, how long do I have to sit through this? It's better for the audience to know. So you're taking your audience on a journey and you're telling them what to expect. It will help them to stay connected throughout, and it will help you not to get interrupted by people who don't know when it's an appropriate time to ask a question. So we'll have a look at some handy signposts here, but most of the great signposts that we have available are you'll find in the free download that I'll give to you. That's a presentation template. We've got lots of the main signposts in there. We've also got a free downloadable ebook for all kinds of business English phrases. So make sure you download those. I'll leave the links in the comment section below. Okay, so now we know what signposts are, let's have a look at them. At the start of a presentation, you need to tell the audience what you're going to be talking about. You need to tell them why they should sit through your presentation. My topic today is, I'd like to, this talk will show you one of the greatest signposts that has become really quite famous as well. It was at the beginning of Steve Jobs' 2007 iPhone launch, and he started his talk with, today is the day I've been looking forward to for a long time, or for a while. And the audience were captivated from the very first second. So by all means, be a bit creative with it. But what you want to tell the audience is, this is what I'm here to tell you about. You might even want to tell them, by the time you leave this presentation, you will want to, blah, blah, blah. Remember, the call to action goes at the end. So here it's more just about what to expect. Overview. I'm going to divide this presentation into 3 main parts, for example. Let's begin by, then, next, finally. Please hold your questions until the end. So I'm going to divide this presentation into 3 main parts. You will talk about the 3 different elements that you're going to cover. And I always recommend having a slide that shows them where they are. Use the same slide. Use the same slide, but highlight the different parts as you get to them. Okay, that repetition really helps the audience to keep coming back to how long you're going to be, why they should pay attention. And, you know, even if the first part wasn't so interesting, now they can really tune in. Okay. Also, you could say something like, I'm going to divide this presentation into 3 main parts. I'll take questions at the end of each part. Okay, so you can mix things up and do whatever you feel comfortable with. You might want to say to them, feel free to interrupt me at any time to ask a question. Whatever you do, it's important that you tell them at the beginning. People will think, okay, great, I know when to do that now. Starting your presentation. First of all, let's start with the first point, or let's begin by. You'll see here that we've got some contractions, let's. Don't worry, that's not too informal. With presentations, because it's delivered verbally, well, it's delivered in speech, we can use contractions and not dilute the formality. Okay. Obviously, you know, within reason, you don't want to be using them all the time, but we deliver presentations in, you know, in spoken form. So therefore, we say things in the way that we would normally say them conversationally. You don't have to say, let us start with the first point. That would seem a little bit too robotic and too formal. Okay, following points. The next area I would like to focus on is, I would now like to discuss, there are loads of these phrases, loads and loads. So take a look at the free downloadable template for lots of different alternatives. The reason why we've given you lots of alternatives is because many people stick to just one phrase and they say it at the next point all the way through the presentation. Repetition like that isn't necessarily very good. So it's good to have a variety of different options so that you can keep things interesting. Okay, so now let's move on to the next slide. Analysing and giving examples. Let's consider this in more detail. Okay, you're telling the audience, we're diving deeper now. Okay, a good example of this is, okay, why is this important? This is a rhetorical question. Of course, you're not going to start waiting for the audience to answer it. You are asking this rhetorical question because the human ear really tunes into questions. They think, oh, they're asking me something. I need to pay attention. So this is a particularly good device if you have finished a very long, detailed discussion of something. Maybe say, why is this important? Before you start to discuss the significance of this thing. Okay, so it just perks people up a little bit. An illustration of this, or to illustrate this is a nice alternative to, for instance, or for example, okay, which are very overused. To illustrate this, that's lovely. You might even use that when you're including a visual aid, like an image on the screen, for example. Summarizing and concluding. Now, these are 2 separate things, but I've grouped them together. We have 2 separate sections in the free template for you. Summarizing is to say, this is what I have said. Concluding is to boil it all down to the most essential point, which you need at the end. Concluding can also include your call to action that we talked about earlier. Here are some examples. Finally, let me just recap on the issues we have covered. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, finally. Okay. For example, firstly, I talked about. Secondly, we discussed. Thirdly, we focused on the significance of. And finally, I gave you reasons to blah, blah, blah. In conclusion, we saw that this is a great idea. Now go away and do it. That's obviously a very shortened version of what you might say, but you can see then by using these signposts, the audience can clearly see what you've covered and what they need to do next. It might be possible or necessary for you to digress. What is a digression, you might be asking me? Well, a digression is a little bit like a detour. Okay, so we've been talking about signposts and how signposts are similar to signposts on the road. They tell you where you're going and how long it will take. Now, digressing is when you leave the main theme of the talk for a moment, but you're coming back to it again. Okay, so why might you need to digress? Maybe you've explained something and you think maybe that wasn't clear. Maybe the audience is looking a bit confused. Or maybe you've said to them, you know, ask me a question at any time, and somebody has asked a question, so you need to digress to answer it. Okay. Most commonly, digressing is just explaining something a little bit deeper in the moment, but you haven't necessarily planned it. But you feel in the moment that it's necessary for you to explain in more detail. So you're going off track for a moment, but you'll come back to the main theme very quickly. So these are the main points. It's temporary. You're just leaving temporarily. Okay. This is really helpful for the audience to know because you won't have a slide prepared for it. It's not planned. So it might be that you are saying to the audience, I'm digressing for a moment. So what you can see on the slide is going to be a bit different from what I'm saying. Yeah. One of the many reasons why it's important, and I say this in the course, to keep your slides to a minimum. If you've got loads and loads of writing on the slide, it's hard for people to digest what you're saying and read at the same time. In fact, it's almost impossible. Then if you add a digression to that mix, you will really start confusing your audience. So always best to keep minimal slides if possible. Okay, so let's take a look at some phrases for digressing. Just to move away from the main subject for a moment, I'll just take a moment to explain one key element. Now that we've briefly looked at this key point, I will return to the main subject. So here you can see two phrases for the beginning of the digression, and the last phrase here is to say, okay, the digression is finished now and I'm going back to the main theme. Okay. It's important that you signpost both of those, the beginning and the end of the digression. Lovely. So the last part, answering questions. Now, remember, we have a whole section of the course about Q&A. So these are just a few phrases to get you started. Now, opening up the presentation, you would say, are there any questions at this stage? That's a very good question. We would say that just to play for a little bit of time. Of course, don't say that every time because that will seem very disingenuous. But that's a very good question. Just gives you a valuable second to have a think about your answer. That's a very good question. Let me explain that in closer detail. You've just bought yourself 3 whole seconds to try and formulate an answer. If you memorize it, you don't have to think about it much. Just have to start and your brain will think, okay, this is the answer. If somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, it's always polite to offer to answer the question a little bit later. If you don't know the answer to the question, then you can always offer to send an email to the participant later. Or if you're presenting with somebody else, you can always ask them to field the question. You can find out lots more information and tips and phrases in the question and answer section of the second part of the presentations course. Here's a little image showing you, obviously it's very tiny, so you can't really read it, but this is just an image of the PDF, the template here. Now, we've compiled these signposts into the specific roles that they play at different points in the presentation. You can cut these out and stick them to your script if you want to, or just copy and paste them. And choose which ones you like and remove the ones you don't like. Okay, there's so many involved and many, many more in the other free ebooks that we have for business English phrases. We compiled these signposts to help students who are just getting started with presenting in English. Many students really love the way that they can just literally just copy and paste something, lift it and put it where they need it to be. And actually, this template works brilliantly with the structure of the great talk that I showed you earlier from Nancy Duarte. So we created a blank version of that structure to help with students planning their presentations. So these two templates work really well together. So this one you use when you're planning the main themes that you're going to cover in your presentation. You write what is, you plan what could be again and again. You know, you can scribble down any notes that you want to make here. This is the planning stage. And then when you are ready to actually write your script, then you can use these signposts here. It's super. Okay. You can download lots of ebooks on our website. These are free to download. You just need to enter your email address and you can download this, I think it's 17 pages of business English phrases. We've got a top 10 IELTS speaking topics cheat sheet, and we've got 30 days of phrasal verbs here. So you've got, I think it's 130 new phrasal verbs. So that's great for all English learners. Just hop on over to the Intrepid English website and you'll find a little menu on the left-hand side. Just click the bottom icon and you can download all three of these. Okay, so this is a good time for me to pause now and I'll take any questions that you might have. As I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, for privacy reasons, I won't share the questions that the students will ask in the chat box live. But for anyone who's watching this later as a recording on YouTube or Facebook or any of the other social media platforms, please feel free to comment beneath this. Don't forget to like our videos so that you can receive future videos. And by all means, please let us know if you have any recommendations for future webinars, future courses. We love to hear from our students, so please feel free to drop us a line. Okay, I'll leave you with a quotation from the wonderful Nancy Duarte, who said, "The way that ideas are conveyed the most effectively is through story." And we really look forward to helping you to find that story, to improve your delivery, structure your talk in a way that's really compelling and captivating, and achieve your goals through English. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to launching and showing you all the third part when it's ready next month in July. So take care and look after yourselves and one another, and I'll see you all again very soon. Okay, let's open up the Q&A for everyone who's viewing this live.